Let me introduce to you our industry support team panel, which consists of Montanans that work to support manufacturers across our state. To many of you, these panelists you've known for a while. Todd Daniels. Todd is a field engineer with the Montana Manufacturing Extension Center right here in Helena. Todd works with the Montana Department of Commerce to advise manufacturers on streamlining and growing their businesses. Rhonda, is it Cowgill? Kogel? I used to have an employee by that name. Rhonda Kogel. Rhonda is the lab manager at Montana Tech's Material Testing Lab that supports the Montana Center for Manufacturing Technology at Butte, America. We look forward to hearing from you, Rhonda. And then we have Carrie Hester. Everybody knows Carrie. Carrie is an international trade specialist with the Montana U.S. Export Center. Carrie advises businesses on exporting and global markets from his office in Missoula, Montana. So with that, we will start with our panelists. Todd, you're first up to bat.
All right. Certainly, thank you for the opportunity to be here and share some of your time with new friends and existing friends. I really appreciate that. I also really appreciate the manufacturers that we heard from on that first session. I like the comment about the struggle that they're dealing with, especially when they talk about workforce. It seems to be a common theme. I know working with Rebecca Ingham, we've seen that up in Great Falls. A common theme about manufacturing is different. So how do we teach our new employees about manufacturing? And I've got a cute story. A friend of mine named Claude Smith, who works at Pasta, Montana, uses this analogy. He says it's the difference between buying underwear at Walmart and working in a pasta plant. When you go to Walmart and an operator or an employee doesn't show up, you can still buy underwear. But in a pasta plant, when an operator doesn't show up, that line doesn't produce product that day. So there's quite a difference in a manufacturing environment than there is in a lot of other environments. So to that end, in looking out and seeing some of these familiar faces, there is one person in here that is a personal hero of mine that I wanted to acknowledge before I get going down this path a little bit. This person is an innovator. He's working with and on products that we all need to be involved with and we all appreciate. He has done some very fabulous things, and there are a couple companies in this room that need to talk to him and some of his product after this meeting. And so Jim Weber, if you don't mind, could you stand up and just be acknowledged? He's a guy who's deserving of your applause. So. Jim Weber works at Capitol High School, and he works with the high school kids there, helping teach the welding and machining. He's really pushed the limits of it, and he does some things that I haven't even seen done in colleges. So he's one of these that's molding the minds of our young kids and helping them to understand what manufacturing is all about. And I know that Jim isn't the person that connected with the 3D printer, but I believe Capitol High School has one of Bill Nicholson's printers now there as well. So they're teaching kids this stuff right in high school. So with that, I'm going to turn to what I would call an educational spin on things. I have a wife and a mother who are educators, so I feel like I'm obligated to interject something that's educational here. So please take out a piece of paper and a pencil. You too, Tester. All right. So what we're going to learn about here real quickly is, since we're talking about manufacturing, we're going to talk about lean manufacturing. Lean manufacturing. Some of you know that term, and I'm going to give you a quick definition of what lean manufacturing is. It's a set of tools to help you eliminate waste in your processes to become more efficient. Okay? So the real question is, what is waste? This is where you can write down some notes. So what is waste? The best way to define waste is to define what's value. What's a value-added activity? And there are three components to a value-added activity. First, the customer has to want to pay for it. Okay? A value-added activity is what a customer wants to pay for. The second component of a value-added activity is that you are doing something to transform the product or service into that end thing that the customer wants. So they want to buy it, and you're doing something to turn it into that product or service. And last component of this, number 3, is that it has to be done right the first time. Now, I talked to somebody earlier, and they said, gosh, you're a perfectionist then. And not necessarily. What that means is we're working to strive towards perfection. We may not do it right the first time, but we're continuing to improve the processes. So think about the things that you do for your customer. Think about these when you go back to your job and you say, am I doing a value-added activity? Is it something that the customer wants? Am I transforming it? And am I doing it right the first time? That makes sense? Okay, so I'm going to use that same analogy when I talk about MMEC. First of all, when we're talking about what the customer wants, the things that we do at MMEC is we try and meet with the customer to truly understand what the problem is. We have different tools, just different assessment tools, financial tools that we've worked on. And it might even be as simple as just sitting there and talking to you. We don't want to jump in and start doing the project before we really know what the problem is. And sometimes it takes some discussion because the companies we work with don't quite know what that is. And they may not have the resources to buy everything that we could provide them. So it's important to figure out what that is. And I'm going to do a little sales pitch. One of the things that we've been working with is there's a fellow named Joe Calhoun out of Oklahoma who's written a book called The 1 Hour Plan for Growth. And it's a process that can rapidly take us through a strategic plan in a short amount of time. So we've worked with the State Department of Commerce to license this process with Joe Calhoun. So we're doing that now here in Montana with companies where we can go in and do a quick strategic plan within a couple hours and go, well, it may not be MMEC services that you need today, but you might need us 3 steps down the road. So really trying to figure out what the problem is. So that's step 1 for us, is we try and sit there with you and understand what it is that you need. Second then, how do we, MMEC, help you transform your organization? And I put this into about 4 different buckets. One is a technical resource. If you need a question answered, we'll try and find the answer for you. So it's real quick and short term that way. Secondly, we can be a process engineer where we actually go to work for you. It's a temporary need where you hire us to do a job, and when we're done, we leave. Jobs like doing facilities planning or quality management systems or helping teach lean manufacturing. So doing a short-term, or it could be a long-term project depending on the time scale you're looking at. The third bucket I'd put that into is to help you develop your personnel, doing some training. We have all sorts of training modules because it's kind of that same analogy as to teach a man to fish. We want to teach you how to do some of these things. It's more important that we give you the skills so you can improve and grow and walk away and grow that way. And then last, I would say that how we help companies transform is to be there, to be a personal confidant on some of these things. Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody else. So we're there to help you with those things. We can help talk about growth. We have tools to help with developing new products and services as well, tapping into an innovation engineering process. So that's how MMEC helps with the second step when we talk about how do we grow and transform. And so the last step on this, when we talk about what are the 3 aspects of value added, the last aspect on this is do it right the first time. Well, guess what, guys? We are really tied to you. MMEC's funding comes mainly from a national program called the NIST MEP. We don't continue to get funded if we don't meet our goals and objectives. And those goals and objectives are measured by you. If you aren't growing, creating jobs, investing in your organization, we don't get good scores. We don't continue to get funded. What a novel concept, right? We are tied to your success. And there's one other aspect to that we can't actually put down in writing. MSU gets a little bit upset with us when we say this, but I tell this to all my clients, it's 100% guaranteed. If you don't like it, you don't pay for it. And we live by that. We can't put it in writing, but we live by that. So we're on the line with you on these things. So there's certainly a lot more information about MMEC, who we are, what we can do. I know we've got some great brochures, and Deborah has put together a booth for us over there. So there's a lot more information, and I'm certainly going to be around to answer any questions you have. And so I'm going to take some advice from a statement that my wife really likes, and that is never miss an opportunity to shut up. Thank you.
Are we ready? Okay. So I'm Rhonda. Rhonda Caldwell. I'm at Montana Tech. I work for the Center for Advanced Mineral and Metallurgical Processing. I'm the materials specialist for the group. And the group has just recently been transformed into the Center of Excellence for our new PhD program in materials science. And I do a lot of work with companies around the country and in Montana. And as the materials specialist, I run the materials testing lab. And in the lab, I have the greatest job ever. I get to make little things out of big things because I break things all day long. And I break things to find out what their characteristics are. And we break materials from metals that are used for automobiles and aircraft to aerospace, advanced materials like composites, and that's actually my specialty. And so I'm continually cheerleading to increase our composite curriculum at Montana Tech and throughout all of the education in Montana. And in the lab, we also spend a lot of time helping people design and develop new products. And we help people to take their product from concept to reality, and that may be designing just the resins, perhaps the whole system, and we also help them troubleshoot their processing, and that is from the metallurgical side, the mineral processing side, and the advanced materials side. Another of my favorite topics and a new discipline that I've been able to join is starting to stand up the Montana Center for Manufacturing Technology. And this idea came to Pam and I about a year and a half ago, and unknown to us, a couple other folks in town were also thinking along these same lines. And so about a year ago, all of us converged, and we found that there was a gap. And Todd was just talking about all the great services that the MMEC does. I actually, in the lab, see a lot of people before they are ready for lean manufacturing. And sometimes they need help from material selection, maybe the process that they're going to build their their product with, and product design. And when we don't do the due diligence up front with good sound engineering for high-tech products, oftentimes the outcome isn't what we want. And we've had both of those sorts of scenarios come into the lab. We've had people that came just a little too late, and we were able to identify what the problems were, but they were too far down the road to disaster, and the business is closed. On the other hand, we've had people who've acquired businesses or have a new product, and we've been able to identify all of the needs that they have with their material selection, and we've been able to help them take their product from drawing board to prototype to market. And so that's the gap that we had identified, and Pam Hexpicotti and I worked together in Butte, and we, along with John Rogers, had identified that not only is there a technological gap that needs filled, there's also, and one gentleman already talked about it, was there's all kinds of resources in Montana, but how do we find them all? And how do our manufacturers know where to go when they have a question about product? How do they sell their product? How do they sell to the military? And all myriad of ideas. Well, that's what we hope to do with the center. And what we would like to, our concept is that the center will be a one-stop shop that will have technology services available, incubation services available, business development, from writing business plans to having interns from the university system, and also having technical interns. So we have a lot of great engineers at MSU and at Montana Tech that are just dying to stay in Montana. These guys come to school in Montana because they're Rocky Mountain West kids, and they really want to stay here, and we're having a hard time finding a place to put them. So we want to do what we can to keep our kids in Montana, and we also want to serve all of Montana. Now, the center is starting at Tech and in Butte, and we're patterning the concept of this center sort of off of what the NNMI, the National Network of Manufacturing Institutes that President Obama has been promoting. And that concept is that it's a marriage of academia, government, and private industry. And we have that in Butte. We have Tech in the MUS system. We have Butte Silverbow has been a tremendous supporter of this. And then we have private business, and we're repurposing the Mike Mansfield Technology Center in Butte that has a $175 million infrastructure that needs a new function. And so we have great incubation and manufacturing space in Butte. We also have another 900-acre facility that is owned by Solvay that also needs to have a purpose. So we have a lot of built-to-suit and great opportunities there, and we're identifying those sorts of places in every town across Montana. And what we're working in conjunction with pretty much everyone in the MUS system. We're working with Steve Holland and his team and Patty Fleming. We're at the beginning of the technology that we're going to supply from Montana Tech is at the beginning, right? So we're the design part. When you have a product ready for lean, it dovetails right into what Steve and his team do. We also are working with the University of Montana so that we can use some of their incubation space at Montech. So we're not looking to have everything only in Butte, and we're looking to have this center be a one-stop shop so that we can keep manufacturing from design to production in Montana. Pam can tell you a lot of stories too, and that we've heard about different people who said, and we heard it up here this morning, I wanted to do X activity, but I couldn't find it anywhere but in China or Japan or Mexico, and we don't want that. We want to know that if we can't find it in Montana, we at least want to be tied into the national network so that we can find it in the U.S. And we want to keep our manufacturing here so that we can keep our kids here and keep our technology here, because a big risk that you take going to China is that you lose your IP. And all of a sudden, your great and wonderful product that you were going to sell for $25 a piece is now coming back from China for $3 a piece, and you've just lost everything you put into it. All this, everything that you had envisioned for your product could be gone in a heartbeat, and we don't want that. So the center is going to be statewide. At this point, we're in a planning phase, and thanks to Senator Tester and also to the governor's office for supporting us, we were able to win an EDA grant for $200,000 with a 100% match. So we have $400,000, and part of that is also being matched with a Big Sky Trust Fund grant. And our deliverables for that are to have a feasibility study that also includes sustainability. We don't want this to be just a one-year concept. So we have our feasibility study, and we're identifying and actually having a great time doing it. We're meeting manufacturers from extractive industry down to people making small parts in every part of Montana, and we're finding out what everyone needs, and that's really why we're here today. Our whole team is here, and I hope that we'll be able to talk in the break and find out from you what it is that you need. Do you need in the technical part? As you can see, the center will help with technical issues from design and material selection, production, but it also has the business schools involved. And so we, at Tech, we have a nice business school, and one program that's going on right now is Tracy will give you send her top undergraduate or graduate students to your business. They will help you write from a business plan to marketing studies, advertising. They'll do any kind of research, and a couple of our students are now, that have gone out on those internships, are now going to be permanent employees of new businesses. And I know that Steve does that through the Business Center at MSU as well. And so we're going to incorporate those, and we invite you to use that and make sure that you get some great potential workers. Plus you get the backing of the university system, right? If you get a student, you also get their PhD business advisor. And if you take one of our students that's an engineer, you also get a whole bunch of PhD designers and engineering firms, expertise that comes with that student. So it's not just getting a 25 or 22-year-old who is fresh from school. You also get everything that they bring to the table. So it's a great resource that we want to make sure that everyone in Montana knows about. And that's what the center is really going to be emphasizing in our studies of trying to find out what's needed and what we want to do. We're also tying into the national manufacturing centers. And so we already have a project with the Youngstown 3D Printing Center that you might be familiar with. 2 more centers were just announced about 2 weeks ago, one in Chicago and one in Cleveland, I believe, and another one in North Carolina. And so we're working hard to get ties into those. We may be becoming a major spoke if we aren't a hub. And they also, last week, the president announced that the next emphasis will be on composite materials. So we're working very hard to tie in with that group. And while Montana may not be able to stand up one of the national centers on its own, if we're a major spoke on one of these hubs, we get the same service. So we're also trying to pattern the sustainability of the MCMT on that, and it may be a cooperative or a subscription service, something like that. But our goal is not to take money at the beginning of business development or anywhere along there that is too much of a risk for the business to even think about using the center. So we're looking for a lot of alternative ways to fund the center, and we'll spend a great deal of time to make sure that it's of great service to you. So I look forward to having you talk with us. I wanted to point out the rest of the team. Maybe you guys could wave. Kristen and Helen and Andy are here, and then Pam Hexby-Cody. So if you could talk to any of us in the break, we would love to hear what you have to say. And I thank you for your time. Thank you, Senator.
Well, actually, my name's Carrie Hester. I work with the U.S. Department of Commerce. I'm a federal government employee. The agency within the U.S. Department of Commerce that I'm employed by is the U.S. Commercial Service. This is the lead trade promotion agency in the federal government. We're not one, we're not the singular agency that promotes trade. We're one of many, but we're the agency that is given the primary task of helping U.S. businesses access foreign markets, to help you sell into foreign markets and deliver products to foreign markets. My colleague, and I'm gonna shout him out here, Wayne Gardella back in the back, maybe wave to everyone. Wayne is involved with the SBA. The SBA in the realm of foreign trade focuses on finance, primarily pre-shipment financing. And I don't know, do you have export credit insurance, or is that just XM Bank? XM Bank. Exporting. We've talked a lot about manufacturing and how to do it more efficiently, and what the process is. What I want to talk about is how do you find customers overseas? How do you sell to those customers? How do you deliver product to those customers? I heard a few things today in the first panel, which I'd like to call your attention to. Mr. Stevens with Blue Marble mentioned that he mentioned something called export licensing. So as we start this presentation, I want you to understand something. Whenever you're selling overseas, you're operating within a regulatory framework. There are certain laws that attach to your export transactions in the United States, and your buyer has to comply with specific laws in his home country. And these drive a lot of demands that will be placed on you. Okay, that's not my presentation. But I just wanted to check. So conceptually, when you think about exporting, think of it this way. You have a marketing aspect. You have a product delivery aspect. I actually came out of the private sector. I used to work for a company called Sumitomo Corporation. It's kind of a small little company, big company. I used to head up the traffic division in Los Angeles. Now, my group of, I guess we had 5 employees, we handled about $600 million in exporting a year out of Los Angeles, just our office. Sumitomo itself is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. We handled traffic. We handled product delivery. Our sales side did the marketing and sales activity. The U.S. Commercial Service helps on both sides of this transaction. So if you're looking for customers overseas, or if you're looking for markets, we have programs that we can deliver to you to help with that. And I saw the Montana Department of Commerce here earlier, Mark Bison. Why don't you stand up, Mark? Mark Bison works with state government. He's the head of the International Trade and Relations Program. I work extensively with that group as well. Using Mark's, some of his resources, we can do some market screens, identify potential markets for you, as long as you can provide us with a little bit of information about your product. My organization, through me, I can reach out to my colleagues worldwide, which means I need to describe a little bit about our network. The U.S. Commercial Service has employees both domestically and internationally. Now, I'm the only representative stationed in Montana from the U.S. Commercial Service. But internationally, we're in 75 countries around the world. We have about 1,400 employees located both in the United States and internationally. Internationally, I think about 1,100. These employees follow the major industrial sectors in their countries. So if you're looking for, say, customers or distributor in a foreign market, we have programs that we can provide to you that would introduce you to potential distributors. We make the introductions. We can help you when you travel to a foreign market, give you a little briefing on how to do business, arrange your hotel stays, arrange for car and driver service, arrange for interpreter service. My trade specialists will go to your meetings. What we do is we basically canvass the industry after you and I have done a little bit of work on this side, and I have gathered some information about your product and what your normal marketing channels are. We'll have a conference call with my colleagues overseas. So if you plan to, let's say we're targeting Egypt, we'll get the colleagues that are in Cairo online. And generally these people are either in the U.S. embassies or the U.S. consulate's offices. Well, we'll get them online and we'll talk with you. And we'll find out how to market your product. Then my colleague who's overseas will canvass the industry. And they'll identify for you people that are interested in your product, that want to sell your product. And then if you want to go to that market, we'll facilitate that entire trip. We'll help you with, your logistics. Interpretation service, as I said, car and driver service. Sometimes car and driver service is necessary. In Mexico, for example, we don't, we don't control this, but we generally would highly discourage you from using taxis because kidnapping for ransom is kind of a big business. So, you know, we watch over you, we take care of you, we'll introduce you to these partners. After that, it's your step. You go forth, you make the evaluation, you figure out who your customer is, you start selling to them. But we can do that. We can help you promote your products in a market, a foreign market. We can help you find distributors without traveling to an overseas market. Same sort of process. We collect your information, we canvass the industry, we'll send you back a report, and then it's up to you to take it. So these matchmaking services are kind of the core for us in terms of helping you find customers. Market identification is in screens. The U.S. Commercial Service authors or publishes marketing reports, you know, based on various leading industrial sectors worldwide, which we think U.S. products are very competitive in. We put that out on the internet. Access to it is free. Sometimes we hold back our most recent reports. We're not doing that because we don't want to help the U.S. business sector. We're doing that because we found our competitors were accessing our websites and using that information to help you know, foreign businesses tap into those opportunities. So we're a little bit more selective of how we disseminate that information now. But if you call me, I'll work with you to get that information. Now, on the other side, on the product delivery side, that's technical service. And you know, that's just something that we offer. The matchmaking services, I should say, we charge a fee for that. We're not a profit-driven agency, but the Office of Management and Budget does mandate that we do recover a certain percentage of our costs, certainly not 100%. So we do charge a small fee. So for a matchmaking service, for most of you, it would be $700 per market. And then Mark's department, the Montana Department of Commerce, for the last several years has had a grant program that you can tap into to offset a portion of those costs. We call that the State Trade Export Promotion Program, or in the state of Montana, we call that the Montana International Marketing Assistance Grant Program. But Mark Bison can help you learn more about how to apply for that. Product delivery. There's a lot of aspects with product delivery, from shipping to documentation, risk management, setting up a method of payment, export licensing. All of these things I can help you with. Export licensing is probably one thing we need to talk about, because anytime any of you are selling abroad, you're subject to U.S. export control law. Whether, and these laws were mentioned in the previous panel, but whether you produce a defense article or service, in which case you'd be subject to U.S. Department of State regulations known as ITAR, or International Traffic in Arms Regulations, or you're producing something else, something which is not a defense service or article, then you're going to be subject to U.S. Department of Commerce regulations called the Export Administration Regulations. So you need to know, because if you run afoul, there's a regulatory body that might come and visit you, and we don't want you to run afoul of them. So how do you learn about these laws? Well, they have information online, but basically I teach corporations about these laws and how to figure out what the licensing demands are on your company and how you comply with them. So if you're selling, earlier Tom had mentioned that the internet allows him access to foreign buyers. Some of you may be selling to foreign buyers. If you haven't looked at the licensing issues, please talk with me, because we want to keep you in compliance with U.S. law. But it's not just U.S. law, because on the buyer's side, they have laws. They have sanitary laws, they have labeling laws, they have, some places have recycling laws, safety laws and regulations. So another thing that we do is we identify what I call import protocols for a specific market. So if you've got a widget and you want to send it to Germany, we can help you identify what those regulations are and how you document compliance with those regulations. So earlier, not to pick on anyone, but Paige had said she ships maps overseas, and maps often get held up by in customs since they can't quite figure out what's going on. Normally, that is almost always a documentation problem. Now, here's the thing with documents. Your buyer has to receive documents from you, your commercial documents, your transport documents. So that means each one of you as an exporter has an obligation to send the documents to the buyer. They're going to prepare what we call an entry summary, submit it to their customs service. If the documents are not sufficient in terms of information provided, or if a certain document is missing, you have, maybe you forgot to include a certificate of origin, your cargo may get hung up. And this is kind of a key. I want you to remember this. At least with product delivery, documentation drives the cargo flow. We've all seen UPS commercials, and you know, usually there's one party that says, will this item really be in New York tomorrow? Yes, physically it will be. But whether the buyer can receive that good depends on whether they clear customs. As an analogy to that, think of traveling to Canada. You stop at the border, you're asked a few questions. The examining officer makes a decision whether you're allowed entry into the country or not. Physical goods go through the same process, customs clearance process. That's on the buyer's side. That is achieved by the presentation of various documents for exam. Those documents are generated by you and provided by you to the buyer. If you have a problem clearing customs, it's almost always a documentation problem. We help with that. We help with export licensing to make sure that you comply with US law. We help with export reporting, which is a report you have to file with the federal government when you make a shipment. So there's a lot of mechanics involved on product delivery, but the nice thing is you've got people in the state who can help you with that, and we educate you, and that's exactly what I think Todd had mentioned earlier. We want to help you get up to speed as to what the rules and regulations are and how to comply with those rules and regulations, so then we're more focused on finding new markets, identifying new business partners for you, increasing sales of your business and helping you grow and prosper. And so with that, I'll conclude my remarks. But Senator Tester, thank you very much for putting this event on.
We've got some time for questions. Any questions for the panelists up here today? Yes, ma'am. Right there.
Yeah, what I would recommend is call our office in Bozeman, 994-3812, and talk with Mark Shine. He's our field engineer there, and let him know. We also have a student that does research, and tapping into Mark's experience. He has about 25 years of manufacturing experience and knowledge of the manufacturers in the area. He can also then send that request out to the rest of us throughout the state. And we also can tap into the national network, post a question that says we're looking for this type of material, and we'll go to all 56, 57 centers in the United States, hitting all 2,500 field agents that way. So we can start small rings and work our way out. That's what I'd suggest.
Hello, my name is Ryan Weiser, and I think this question is specifically for Carrie, but we had one of our customers last year ask us to partner with them in selling their products online when they were traditionally selling through a vendor relationship. So they opened up a B2C commerce through their own business, and we've been talking about, and we've got that up and going, and it's selling and doing well, but we've been talking about now stretching that out to, outside of the United States through internet sales, more from a B2C. I don't know if that was something that you can, if we would have questions that we would ask you, but obviously we could go the straight shipping method of just sending it to them, but that seems to be pretty expensive for a normal person trying to buy a couple $100 product, or is there more of a better way to set up a distribution in different markets that would be able to distribute the products in a better way? So that's one kind of question. And then the other one is all the documents you were talking about. I'm assuming there's an EDI type process, an electronic document interchange, that should make it fairly seamless, I would think, but your thoughts on that?
When you're selling B2C, initially, the best way to distribute, I think almost by necessity, in the beginning, until you've achieved a certain volume, you're probably going to have to deliver product to your customers via a courier service like UPS, FedEx. Sometimes U.S. Postal Service works very well. Those are quite good for B2C shipments because those entities all will clear customs on your behalf. So the buyer doesn't need to work with a broker. The buyer can essentially just wait for the product to be delivered to them. Now, after a certain volume has been achieved, then it might make sense to look at setting up a distribution center or warehouse in whatever market that you have a significant volume of sales. At that point in time, you could actually start to deliver product to the warehouse and then probably work with a private warehousing company and then have them do pick and pack, send operations where they take your orders that you get off the internet and then they package them up and they just distribute them from the warehouse directly. But I think that's, you're going to incur a lot of costs in that type of operation, so you need to generate or come up with some sort of volume before you move into that. But at this point in time, probably just work with your courier services. As far as documents, normally end purchases, B2C type transactions are a little bit easier to clear through customs, but in almost every case, it's going to be a commercial invoice, sometimes a certificate of origin, depending on if the United States has a free trade agreement with the country where the buyer is located. The airway bill that the courier produces will serve as the bill of lading. So generally that'll take care of it. You still must be cognizant of the export licensing controls on the product when you ship it to a final consumer of the product. So you have to comply with that. And in fact, if you get on the website of, say, UPS or FedEx, and you're going through and you're inputting the information, they have a couple data fields that are mandatory that ask you specific questions about what type of licensing authorization you're making the shipment under. And so, again, one of the foundational issues that all of you need to address and be cognizant of is what the export licensing controls are. Which body of law are you subject to? And then how do you determine what your licensing authorization is? And I spend a lot of time educating Montana companies about this, so you can approach me after we're done with this panel, and I'll talk with you.
Further questions? I've got a question for Carrie then. Carrie, I've been told by some of the folks in the ag business at least that contacting customers in the Pacific Rim and developing relationships is very, very difficult. Could you give me your perspective on that market and how do you approach that market to develop the kind of trust that's necessary to do business?
Yeah, I work with the U.S. Department of Commerce, and we handle everything but agricultural commodities. However, the nice thing is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they also have a trade promotion agency. And now they don't have a representative here in Montana, but it's called the Foreign Agriculture Service. Those gentlemen that work with FAS are also located in the U.S. embassies and the U.S. consulates. So on occasion when I work with a processed food manufacturer or somebody who's selling an egg product, say lentils or something, I can often work through my network and we can contact our colleagues in FAS and put the Montana company directly in touch with FAS. And then once that introduction has been made, usually FAS will work directly with them to introduce buyers to them, to bring them to shows, to promote their products. FAS has a whole slew of programs that are available for U.S. exporters of egg commodities. The only slight hiccup with that is there's no representation here, so I've taken that on myself to make introductions to FAS for those companies concerned.
Okay, good. Other questions? Last call. All right, before we break, I want to introduce a couple other economic developers that are here with Blackstone Launchpad. Pam Haxby-Cody, who is standing in the back. She's a director. She's from Butte. Paul Azar, I hope I didn't butcher your name too bad. He's the director from MSU Launchpad Bozeman, and Paul Gladen, who's the University of Montana director. The Launchpad program was actually started. The birth of it was a year ago last June, almost 2 years ago, at a small business opportunity workshop, just like this one on startups, where we had a keynote speaker by the name of Tony James. Now this is no pressure on you, Tab, but the bottom line is that he saw the entrepreneurial spirit in Montana, and the upshot of that was a significant grant to be utilized by startup businesses in this country, administered in great part by the university system. So we appreciate you guys being here, and if you'd stand and kind of let folks know where you are, or at least raise your hand, we appreciate you being here. Thank you very, very much. Now, tab is set for 11 o'clock. We will start right on the mark unless somebody gives me a sign for earlier. No, that's when we'll start. We'll start at 11 o'clock. And in the meantime, there are vendors over here that I failed to mention before the last break. Be sure and stop in and say hi. They can be a big benefit to you also. And it also gives you an opportunity to visit with one another and the panelists up here. Let's give another round of applause for the panelists.